American business continues to lead when it comes to equality. This is the Focus Group.
It's the savvy side of 9 to 5. Listen.
Bueller.
Laugh. And learn.
Negotiation. This is what you do in business.
This is the Focus Group with Tim Bennett.
Staunch.
And John Nash.
Keep your clothes looking neat and clean.
We're all business. Except when we're not.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Focus Group. Tim Bennett here, as always, with my good friend and co-host, Mr. John T. Nash. It is May 20th already as we storm toward a Memorial Day holiday weekend. I guess it's a Memorial Day. Is it Memorial Day holiday weekend? I guess that's what you would call it, John. We want to thank you for joining us. We're here live every Wednesday at 1 p.m. East through Facebook Live, also through our YouTube stream, which you can find us at Focus Group Radio on YouTube. Go to Focus Group Radio to find out all about us, as well as all of our programming, both audio and video. We have an audio podcast, which comes out every Tuesday, called TFG Unbuttoned, and you can find that there with us as well. How are you, Mr. Nash?
I'm doing good, and as you said, I'm actually really. I think Garrett and Steve, our boys in the booth, said something as well about this. 90 days and counting. So, March turned into April, and now we're at Memorial Day.
Wow.
And it's nicer weather. So normally there's a bit of a transition for me from spring to quote unquote summer, but with all the stuff with the event going on and our stay at home, it just seemed to come up pretty quickly, didn't it?
Yes, it sure did. And it feels like Connecticut was the last state today to start officially opening, I suppose is the right word. And but I was out driving around earlier this week in the PA area, and it felt almost a little bit like normal. There was actually some traffic backup. So I don't know if people are getting back to work or back to the office or just are tired of being sheltering in place and want to get out and drive.
I have a what I call a sideways metric for this, and it involves my cycling. So upstate, when we all got into the lockdown mode, exercise was always okay. You can go out as long as you're a certain distance from people. And up here, mostly it was chickens and cows, so I was safe on the bike. But from March till, for the first several weeks, if you went out, it was rare to see a car on the road. It was a car that you rarely saw a car. Now, right. This past weekend, we had some nice weather up here, beautiful weather actually on Saturday, and I went for a ride, and it looked like a normal Saturday, a completely normal Saturday in terms of traffic. So my brain told me that these partial openings probably arrived just in the nick of time because I think people are getting a little bit stir crazy, and and suddenly it's like, okay, we've been inside for 8 weeks or 9 weeks. 10, 11, 12 sometimes. Let's get outside and do something. But there was a lot more automobile traffic, so I think you're correct about that.
Yeah, that's for sure. So you mentioned the boys in the booth. Hello, Garrett. Hello, Steve. How are you? You guys doing okay?
Doing great.
Doing great? Are you just the sole people in the studio, or are there other folks joining you, or are you just in there, you two running the show?
A few of the hosts come in, but other than that, it's just us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
Holding the fort down.
Want you guys to come back.
Can't wait. Believe me, cannot wait.
Who knows when all that will happen, right?
Tomorrow, if you want. Just drive in.
Just drive in. I was in the city last week, guys. I came in on maybe it was after the show on Wednesday or before that, but it was I was in the city for the show last week. You guys remember, because of audio issues, I was doing it with the iPad. It was a pleasant visit, and it was great to see my neighbors, and I took some walks with my neighbor Barbara. Of course, we all wore our masks, and we were socially distancing, and I noticed most people were, and I really loved the energy of it. I was like, I can't wait to be back around all these people again. Normally, you know me, Tim, I have a threshold. 5 or 6 days, I'm like, let me get out of the town and be away from this for a bit, and then I have to get back in. But I really felt the need to be around people.
Well, when we were at Sirius, all you did was complain about the amount of people in Manhattan. You used to complain all the time when we would walk to the train station. You would get so angry. You'd be walking in the street because you felt the tourists didn't know how to handle the sidewalk.
Stephen Garrett, you can back me up on this one. I'm sure you completely agree with my behavior. They do not know how to handle themselves, A, and B, yes, all New Yorkers, true New Yorkers, think it's too crowded all the time, right?
Especially where Sirius was, right next to Times Square.
Right.
Next door, yeah.
All the big towers of Midtown are there, Radio City Music Hall, and yeah, the Times Square was only.
And forget it when the tree when the tree was up. That was real craziness. The tree.
Yeah, you didn't want to go into work when the tree was up, man. That was always
crazy. Hey, I know we were talking, or we have been talking about shows that we've discovered or we watched. But I watched a documentary last night. I don't know if you saw it, called Secret Lives, about two women.
Did
you see that?
Lauren recommended that over at Deep Discount. She's one of our marketing people, and it's on my list to watch. And it's going to be the thing we watch right after we watch Hollywood.
You have quite a list.
Well, I don't binge watch. I can't sit in front of the TV for 5-6 hours. I just can't do it because there's other things that have to get done, and 6 to 7 hours of devoted to television watching is not my idea of a good time. It's not a bad time, but it's just not for me. So,
but if there was a Star Wars marathon, though, somebody would have his ass plucked down there.
Given that the marathon would involve the prequels and the new ones, no, you'd probably get me plonked down for Star Wars, Empire, Rogue One. In fact, that's my new trilogy. I bet the boys in the booth would agree. Rogue One, Star Wars, Empire. All the others can just go by the wayside. But Hollywood, we're watching carefully. Steve, you don't agree?
I didn't even think Rogue One was that great. I mean,
nobody did.
Maybe it is. I watched it and don't remember any of it.
I remember liking it, but I saw it on the plane under edibles. So.
Oh, so you were forced to like it. It's like fucking Stockholm
and by the way,
syndrome.
There's two things going on.
I liked Wonder Woman for the same reason. I was on a plane.
Steve, yeah. We talked about this months ago about how when you're on a plane, sometimes you react to things differently because it's pressurized. You're close to people. You're thinking. You're doing
captive
nothing.
Audience. You have to sit there and pay attention to every little thing. Or else,
I saw Wonder Woman in the theaters with Bob, and we actually liked it. And you liked it on the plane, and Garrett liked Rogue One on a plane. Okay, I'll take that. But anyway, back to Hollywood and Netflix. It's a great show. And every episode we watch, we have to digest it. And we're only like 2 more away from the end. And as Tim predicted, it ratchets up, and it ratchets up, and it ratchets up. And we finished last night, and Bob and I looked at each other. We're like, wow, Tim is not kidding. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right?
It does, but there's been lots of criticism, which I think you just have to watch it for its entertainment value. There was some criticism of it, and which I guess people are critical of lots of things, so that's why people have opinions. But I think it's good. It's good entertainment, and if you look at it as that, I think it does its purpose.
How did you like Secret Lives?
I liked it a lot. It's about 2 women who lived secret lives. They were together for 70 years. And it chronicles what life was like for them in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. It chronicles their lives, and it's not long. I think it's 72 minutes, maybe, but it's a good. It moves along, and I think it's a good time capsule as to what was going on, particularly with same-sex relationships when they were not even talked about. So I think you'll enjoy it. So what? So anything else exciting? You're not watching anything other than Hollywood, or are you watching some other programming?
Oh, we're now and then the documentary route for us we love, and sometimes here's the thing. And anybody who has a cable package probably experiences this on a day-to-day basis. We go to the cable guide and we scroll through page after page after page of things that we don't want to watch, we have no interest in. Then there's a whole block of channels that are devoted to sports, and then there's the pay-per-view. And then we turn on the Apple TV and we go to Netflix or Prime or Hulu, whatever service we're checking out. And then you're confronted with more decisions to make, right? I have to go through the grid. This is continue watching, recommended for you. Have you seen this? So we land on a couple things now and then. Like there's a show called Explained. It's like 20 minutes, and they explain things. The other day they explained we watched 2 episodes. One of them was on athleisure, the rise of this concept of athleisure in fashion. I forget what the other one was, but it's just something that you could have on, and you could pay attention to it, but not like when I watch Hollywood or when we watch the Secret Lives documentary that you just mentioned. Like I'm fully engaged. Like, and so sometimes we just want TV to be on so we could do things like I could read my iPad or talk to Bob, and it's the friend in the background that's chattering all the time. So.
There was something on one of the services, and it might have even been on Comcast. I can't remember, or Xfinity, but it was how to cut an onion, how to cut a pepper. There was all these things about things you can do in the kitchen. And they were only about 3 or 4 minutes long, but then I couldn't get it off because I kept trying to. That's my only confusion about a lot of these services. I have to end up shutting them. I have to end up shutting, like exiting, in order to get out of the menu. I haven't mastered that yet. But this whole thing was about just cutting basic fruits and vegetables and the proper way to do it, which was actually quite funny.
Speaking
because they
of
do
which,
give it to people. Go ahead.
Have you ever watched when they have a cooking show or something and they have a master chef or a sous chef working with like the Ginsu knife, doing the and the knife seems to be so close to their fingers. You're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like people actually learn how to do that stuff, right? Like how to manage the knife properly and how to cut the veggies and be super precise.
Yeah, it's you're right. And I always look at, like, I'm thinking that myself, I'm going to slice a fingertip or I'm going to do something like that. So it always, it does scare me. But
you use your first knuckles right below your fingertips, and you put the knife on that. So then there's no way you could cut your fingers.
You mean Garrett, you bend your, like, let's say your middle 3 fingers to the first knuckle, and if the blade rests against
and
that,
then you rub the blade against those knuckles, so that you don't have a chance to cut your fingers. That's what they do.
Where did you learn that? You know, like everything.
I cook a lot. That's why.
Oh, wait a minute. 4 years, we're just hearing we cook a lot. How come we haven't received anything? All we see in that office is takeout.
Where's our casserole?
You see me eating stuff, I just don't share. I'm not a good sharer.
Really?
Even if you ask, he really doesn't. He's just like, no, it's mine. Fuck you.
Well, and you can get away with that now. Nobody wants to touch, right? What's going to happen to the buffet? No one's going to go to buffets anymore.
Oh, please. Garrett doesn't use soap. He wouldn't care about that.
Good one, Steve. We haven't done the soap rant in a while. I think about that.
Soap rant. Yeah.
I think about that when I'm cleaning my private parts. I think of poor Garrett's girlfriend.
Oh boy.
So, Mr. Nash, what caught your eye this week?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
All right, what caught my eye is apparently what caught my friend Chris's eye. Now, you know my friend Chris teaches up at Williams College, and I haven't actually spoken to him for a bit. We've exchanged some text messages. I think he actually might have had the virus quite a while ago. But
he had it?
I think he did. He wasn't sure. Last time we texted each other, he had symptoms of maybe like a cold or a bronchitis kind of thing, so maybe he got it checked out. But if I ever want to know what's going on in an interesting cultural way, Chris is quite he's got a great Facebook feed. So I thought, I was looking around for Caught My Eye, and I went to Facebook, and I see Chris is in there. And he had a posting, and the posting is this: the Inn at Little Washington thinks mannequins will make social distancing less awkward. The Michelin-starred restaurant hopes to make its dining room feel less empty once customers return at limited capacity. So this is an area restaurant in the D.C. area, Northern Virginia area, famous for show-stopping presentations of its haute American tasting menus, has come up with a equally theatrical, albeit a little creepy, way to make the dining room feel less empty. So what they're going to do is they're going to set up all the tables, they're going to socially distance them, and tables that can have customers will obviously be ready to be seated. And in the tables where you're supposed to like keep distance, they're going to have mannequins dressed in period costumes, which I thought was kind of hilarious when I saw this. I thought, oh my God, they're thinking it's more like a performance art thing. That's how they're looking at it, because it's like set decorating and all that stuff. The look and the feel, the performance art is still being worked out. But a spokesperson says couture sets will align within the whimsical vein of the Inn's reverently irreverent approach to hospitality. I had to reread that a couple times when I was doing my notes. The Inn's reverently irreverent approach to hospitality. The restaurant is working with Arlington's signature theater and design founder to build the sets, as they're calling the dining room. So it's a cool property, and there's also about a 23-acre or a 20-acre property surrounding this that they're going to have picnic tables and stuff set up on as the summer progresses, so you could dine al fresco and still be separated from people. But I just think that I would like to go purely because who doesn't want to sit next to tables of mannequins? I mean, it will be kind of creepy in a way. Like you'll be eating and you'll be like, is that person looking at me? No, they've been looking at me all dinner because they're a mannequin. Now you saw this as well, right? You came across
Yeah,
this.
no, I saw the story. I've been to the Inn of Little Washington probably 5 or 6 times. It's a
Never
great.
mentioned that. Seriously?
Oh yeah. No, that's why I saw the story. That's why it caught my eye too. Is because so it's in a great little town. It is typical of small town Americana, and the restaurant is fantastic. The owners are hilarious, and we're friends of mine. And they have a phenomenal 4th of July weekend celebration there, and that's when you're talking about the property that surrounds, and people picnic, and the fireworks are great, and there's a parade, and it's a great little town, great place, great restaurant. It is expensive because it's Michelin rated, but it's certainly worth the trip. It's probably, I'd say, 60, 70 miles west of DC, and you know my friends in Culpeper. That's how I know. I used to go with those guys.
And you're not kidding about pricing. It says here with tasting menus that run $248 per person before pairing of wine. It's a luxury draw for big spenders from DC. So if you were to go from Philly, that's a couple hours, right?
Yeah, it's probably 3 because of traffic. Probably 3.5. Yeah, but it's fun. It's a beautiful part of the country. It's and there's lots of other things around there in the Rappahannock County and.
You pronounced it correctly. I was going to ask you about that because they.
How do you know I pronounced it correctly? I could have pronounced it wrong.
I'm staring right at it, and I practiced beforehand because it was Rappahannock, but you said Rappahannock.
Rappahannock, and Culpeper, and the farms and the horse farms. This reminded me, though. I took a trip one time, to Africa, and I think I told you the story where we had said to the guides, "What's the weirdest group of people you've ever had?" And they immediately said it was a woman who they picked up a woman in Nairobi at the airport to go on safari, but she said she had a group of 6. So she had all these trunks, and they pick her up and they load the trunks up, and she doesn't say anything, and they keep saying, "Where is everybody?" She goes, "Oh, we're here. And as they're driving, they didn't really pay attention to her in the bus and the van. She unpacked these mannequins and set them up next to her. She put 3 in the back and 2 next to her. And the guy's looking in the mirror saying, "Oh my God." So she paid for the 5 mannequins plus her to go on this safari. And I said, "What'd you do?" She says, "We took her on safari. We got pictures with her with the mannequins of different poses, and she was some crazy from London." So
did you practically cry with laughter when you heard that?
We were screaming
because
as they told the story
like that. Period.
I could see the same thing happening here, couldn't you? You could go to the restaurant, and you could be sitting with the mannequins and get your picture taken. So.
Hey, before we continue, I think we have Billy on the phone, right, Garrett? And he wanted to talk a little bit about some of the reopening here in New York State.
Hey, some of my best friends are mannequins.
Welcome, Billy. Welcome. How are you guys doing?
We're doing well. More restaurants have opened in Beacon. It's pickup only, curbside, and our lonely sort of gay bar has kind of opened up. Gay-friendly bar, anyway. But it's
how does that even work for a bar? Are people basically just outside?
Yeah, they have an outside patio, so you can order, and there's social distancing outside. But we got away from the cooking, baking, and now we picked up about $100 worth of liquor. So we're trying a different venue now. Edwin's become quite the bartender.
Well, there was a picture on Facebook that explains that picture of Edwin behind all the bottles, and it did look like it was a bar setup, right?
Yeah, just a little bit, yeah. Well, that was even order online and pick up. You had to order online from that big store on Route 9, and then you pull up and you text them that you're here, and they come out and they put it in the car for you, and away you go.
Yeah, we've done curbside for a couple of restaurants. It seems to work fine. In fact, I've got to order a couple dinners between now and Friday because I put them in the refrigerator, and we have obviously Instameal, right? But it comes from a nice restaurant. I was curious on the restaurant. If Beacon has some restaurants that are opening, is that also outside dining, I guess?
They haven't done that yet. It's still just
it's curbside pickup. Okay.
Yeah, but it's probably up, I'd say 40% this past weekend and the past 2 weeks. it's really ramping up. More people are coming out because we're a destination town anyway.
You're a beautiful town, actually. You live in a beautiful part of the state. I wasn't aware that, our capital district up here near Albany just opened today for phase one, non-essential pickup and Bob went to Lowe's earlier. He said it was packed because all the construction folks are now able to get onto the sites with just more than one person or something. So, I'm optimistic. I hope people are, when you're out, Billy, do you see people wearing masks and taking care?
It depends on the religion. Because I have to go to Sullivan County, and let's just say it's a large Hasidic influx, and you will rarely see a mask on them. So we're having that issue, but they have high numbers in their problems anyway.
In fact, Mayor de Blasio had to shut down a school in Brooklyn, a yeshiva, that was not paying any attention to any of this distancing and mask requirements. I don't even think the mask is that onerous, honestly. Once you get used to wearing it, you're like, okay, and I can do the sanitizer. But you're right. That is something of an endemic thing for that community, right?
Yeah. Tim, maybe you might know somewhat about this. I have to travel in PA next month, and I already talked to one of my friends who is a kind of a truck driver, and he says the rest areas are not open. You can't stop for a speed break when you're traveling the interstate. So is there anything like that down around in your area?
Yeah, no, that seems to be the complaint, because John and I were actually talking about doing a cross-country drive for one of our clients, and that seemed to be the issue, is that none of the rest stops in a lot of states were open, as were hotels. We weren't able to book hotels. So it's I'm hoping that as all the states have started to reopen, that obviously the rest stops will be one of the first things that they get open, because if you're a long haul trucker, you're just driving long distance, you need to stop and use the facilities. So, but I don't know about as of today, but I do know that was an issue.
Yeah, it's a long ways to Altoona.
All right, we're going to move on with the show, Billy. Thanks for calling in, and hello to Edwin.
Yes, we'll wish you were biking with us this weekend when we're walking.
Okay.
Later.
Take care.
Thank you.
So speaking of biking, my caught my eye. The headline is "Bicycle Sales Surge as Americans Seek to Avoid Mass Transit and Get Exercise." So they highlighted a number of bicycle shops across the country, and there was one particularly in Oregon and California where they said that this one guy, Mike Olson, owns 13 bike shops, and he said he hasn't had a moment's peace since the event. He's sold out of bicycles. In some cases, his sales are up 60 to 80% over the last year. He said just in April alone, his sales are up 30%, and in most cases across all his bike shops, up over 60%. And they said he's trying to hire 40 more staffers to take care of the surge. And so they said what they think's happening, because then they started talking to a number of other bike shops in New York and in the Midwest. And they said that people are seeking other ways to exercise, because as gyms have been closed and people can't exercise, they're turning to their bicycles. So in some cases, they're taking these bicycles out of retirement, getting the cobwebs off, trying to get them fixed. So they're going to bike shops, or they're just saying, let me go buy a bike, because at least I can get outside and ride and get exercise. The other thing that's happening is parents are getting their kids out on bikes too, to try to get some of the energy out of them and and get them some exercise as well. So they did a study. There was a group that just did a study, and they're called Wintergreen Research, and they talked to 1,000 Americans and asked them what their opinion was of cycling. And they said 80% of the Americans see it as a safer alternative than to taking public transportation. And they expect that this is going to last for a few years. And so Trek and a number of bike companies are trying to source bikes. The big issue, of course, is a lot of these bikes and the parts are made in China. And as those factories get online, they're trying to refill orders. But it's turned into a booming business that nobody really expected. And, I would like to see more people riding bikes and more bikes on the streets and people being healthier
really?
that way.
Would you really?
I would. If in Philadelphia, Philadelphia tried and they botched it up, I think. They have roads that they just dedicated for bikes, and then they kind of did the half and half. And what ends up happening is when you do that, people just go anywhere. And so rather than having designated bike routes for people for commuting, because Philly's streets are so narrow, it would make a lot of sense. And before you make a comment, though, just one final thing, I did laugh about this. They said that lots of unpopular models are being snapped up as well, which they're excited about because of the colors of orange and turquoise, which are the worst selling colors for bikes. Who would have known? And also really small bikes and really big bikes. But they said people are desperate. Sales are up in some cases in New York State at 300%. And but pricing, people are starting to price gouge on eBay, of course, who didn't expect that. So,
okay, so I love this piece because I cycle, but I see a lot of what I call, hey, let's take that bike out of the garage, fill the tires, and go for a ride. So the other day we're riding along a road, which is a fairly trafficked road, has a speed limit posted at 55 miles an hour, and we see 3 people riding in the middle of the lane. La da 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 da,
Yeah.
you know, with the little baskets, and you're thinking. So when you said earlier, "Oh, I would like to see more people on bikes," maybe, but you're also a very conscientious driver, and that would probably drive you crazy after a while, seeing that bad behavior, right?
Oh, I don't mean somebody going out to go get ice cream. I mean people going to work or commuting to work that actually have a place to go. Because if you do in the mornings, you probably see this in Manhattan and other cities in America, where people that actually do ride their bikes to work, they're focused. I see them getting into town. They know how to dress. They know how to drive. They know the rules of the road. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the ice cream getters with grandma in the basket.
Yeah,
which
you're
are
absolutely right.
hitting the curb. But you guys experience that as they have in a lot of cities. I've seen these rent-a-bikes, the Indigo bikes or whatever they're called, where people just put in their card and then they take the bike and leave it somewhere. I've seen more people, crash into signposts, crash into the curb. You're right. They've not ridden a bike in a long time. They're in their suit, think they're going to hop on the bike instead of a taxi or an Uber and end up crashing somewhere.
One of my favorite visions of that was, must have been about a year after they initiated the City Bike program, which is what you're talking about. One of those things where you swipe or you have and I'm down by Astor Place, and it was a late spring afternoon, and I actually was on my bike, and I was with a friend. We were appropriately dressed and had helmet on the whole bit, and we were talking about this exact thing. We're talking about how people are unaware of their surroundings. They could easily get hit by a car, run into a pedestrian. And as we're saying this, we're stopped at a light. We're just standing with our bikes. This guy rides by with the high water pants and no socks and a pair of like Gucci loafers and some little blazer on and a hat, like a rakish chapeau, right? And he had a coffee in one hand and a bagel in the other, and he had a phone nestled in the crook of his, like he was holding it, you know how you hold your arm up to keep the phone, and he was riding without touching the handlebars. He was going straight down Broadway, and he goes by us. It was almost like a billboard for like, please hit me. My friend Matt looked at me. He's like, what? You got WTF, right? What the?
Well, your idea of cycling, though, is very different than somebody just doing whatever. So you're not the guy that's renting the bike. Have you ever rented one of those bikes?
I refuse to. They weigh a ton. They're no, I'm not going to do it. And I was not going to be the dandy on the bike with the coffee and the bagel either on my way to La-di-da land, wherever he was going. I just wanted a pothole.
Going to Dreamland.
Nicely said. Going to Dreamland. Yeah.
So our business birthday today comes from a listener.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
So our business birthday, thanks to Ann Saluga, she had sent this to us and a while back. And if you know of a business birthday that we may have missed or that you know is coming up, let us know, and we take note of it and we'll share it with the audience. This is a pretty cool one. The guy's name is Robert C. Schweitzer, or Bob Schweitzer, and he was born May 19th, which would have been yesterday, 1914. He died of Parkinson's disease in 1997 at age 83. American inventor, businessman, and environmentalist. You would know him as the inventor of the first black light fluorescent paint. Along with his brother Joseph Schweitzer, they invented something called I'll say it wrong, probably MagnaGlow process for non-destructive flaw detection in machine parts. And they also founded Dayglow Color Corp, where they would develop and manufacture fluorescent paints and pigments for other products. And how they stumbled into this is Bob they were born in Montana. He went to college to major in chemistry in the hopes of being a physician at Berkeley. And during the summer of 33, he was working on loading tomatoes at the Heinz Company and ended up falling and fractured his skull and had serious injuries. He was in a coma for quite some time. and it severed his optic nerve. So the doctors told him he needed to stay in a dark room until he recovered his eyesight for several months. They said this went on and on. So while convalescing from his injuries, his brother and him started searching for fluorescent materials where he'd be able to see better. And so they came upon, and then they thought they could also use these fluorescent materials in their magic act that they did on the side as an amateur thing. So they inspected a bunch of products, and from their father's pharmacy, they used this black light to identify fluorescent compounds and different sorts of pigments, and ended up coming upon and mixing shellac with these pigments and developed black light fluorescent paints, which we all know, that sort of day glow stuff. And that was in 1934. They moved the company to Cleveland. It became a subsidiary of Warner Brothers Pictures. They specialized in making movie posters and advertisements. And then they also Tide detergent was one of the first to use their colors in advertising. And so the fluorescent paint business was started. They did lithographs, makeup, fabric dyes, etc. I was trying to. Do you know the difference between fluorescent and neon? Because I kind of thought they were the same, but they aren't. Do you know that? Do you know the difference?
So fluorescence is a chemical process, and neon is a gas that's electrified to create the light. But the fluorescence happens just by sheer fact of the material that it's actually. Like, because there are some animals that have bioluminescence, which is sort of like fluorescence, I think. Am I in the right camp or no?
Yeah, they said. Well, no, you're right. You're probably more correct than most. It says does not. So fluorescent does not glow in the dark, but it does glow intensely under a black light. So remember in the 70s, those black light posters, you'd put the black light on, and then they would glow. Right. Spencer Gifts, exactly. And they said fluorescent paint appears to be a bright neon color under normal daylight or other visible light and glows brilliantly under black light. So they ended up selling the company, and but they had a great go of it. And as I said, he had passed away at 83 years old in Shaker Heights. So this was there's a little children's book that came out in 2009 called The Dayglow Brothers, about Bob and Joe and their invention of fluorescent materials. So happy birthday.
You know what's fascinating about that story is the accident that led to this and led to him convalescing for months in a dark room. I mean, think about that, right?
Yep.
Now, I'm sure he had people taking care of him. He could leave, but basically, in order for the optic nerve to heal itself, I guess it just couldn't deal with light input of any kind, right?
Yeah, very much so. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. So if people let me know, it's Switzer. So it's either Switzer or Schweitzer. I don't know what the correct.
I would go with Switzer.
Switzer. Okay, yeah. We'll call him Switzer then. But yeah, you're exactly right, John. It was one of these things where this unfortunate accident created this business and a career for him, which was totally unexpected. No different than when we talked about Dan Gerber from the Gerber baby food, where his wife was frustrated about constantly mashing up food. Father had somewhat of a low-selling, not very profitable canning business, and decides to make baby food. And next thing we know, you've got Gerber baby food, right? So it's one of those things that I always like that about some of these business birthdays. So thanks again to Ann Saluka for sending us that.
What was that author? We had an author on many years ago on Sirius, and his last name began with an S. I'm pretty sure of that. And it was this theory that if you wrote down every little problem you encountered every day, you would eventually find one that you could solve, and that would be your aha moment. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yes, and why can't I remember his name? He's famous.
Yeah,
he actually is pretty famous.
He sent us this workbook we had to do, and you actually did it for like 8 or 9 days. You actually came up with something. It was a parking idea for parking spaces, and there was something about cutting lawns too. But it goes back. I might be fuzzy on that one, but one time you were like, "Eureka!"
Cutting lawns and also cutting wood. And this just happened to me again at Home Depot. I needed a 5.5. I was fixing my screen, and I needed a 5.5 piece of board cut. And it's such a hassle at Home Depot to try to get somebody to do. And I thought if somebody could just go in there, I don't need to buy the 12-foot piece, which a lot of people have to do and then cut it themselves at home. But I thought if you could do something internally where it was safe enough at Home Depot for them to allow you to use the tools to cut your own wood to the size you need, and then be charged by the foot or by the inch. I thought it would be a much more efficient way of selling that sort of lumber, but they probably don't want the consumer doing that.
I've got a name for you that should put you off having customers do anything on their own with power tools in a store, and that name is Alfie Miller.
Oh, was he the one who cut his
my old industrial arts teacher who cut the end of his finger off while teaching us how not to cut our fingers off in industrial arts class.
Which is why they don't allow you to do that at Home Depot, right? Which is probably why. That's funny. But, I want to remember his name because he was the guy, I think, didn't he invest in YouTube, or he invested in QVC or a couple of these other companies? And he was telling us, he said, if you write down every day, you write down something that you think could improve somebody's life. And I had the idea about the parking one. You're right. If people had all these parking spaces that worked in Manhattan and you were parking there Monday through Friday, I wonder if there was an app where you can get that parking spot on Saturday and Sunday.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
or you even had the idea one further that if people had permanent spots at a garage and they were gone for a week or two, rent the spot out.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't know how you would go about doing that. So, that was funny.
But you're on the right track with your little notebook and your every day there's a problem I'm going to solve, right?
You know what? I think we should institute that again. You ended up not doing it, though, did you?
Yeah, I lost interest.
Oh, boy.
All the problems I wanted to solve are solved already. So I have to come up with a whole set of problems.
Solved already? The better mousetrap. You're going to build the better mousetrap. But
it goes back to the business birthday stuff of the baby food company or this fluorescence thing. Like, necessity is often the mother of invention, and it's those little things that people do that make a difference, right? But then again, you look at the pet rock, which was big in the 70s. There was no need for the pet rock, but he sold rocks in a box with a little bit of hay for, I don't know, what was that, $5.99 a rock or something? They went crazy.
Well, it's get in, get out. It's like those fidget spinners, right? Everybody had the fidget spinner. We need to get it. We need to get in, get out. You need to do it.
I'm with you on that. I want to get in, get out. I wanted something like that.
I mean, we missed the boat on the customized masks. I think that's already over.
That ship is sailed. That is sailed. Yeah.
So, hey, many of you know that Deep Discount's been a partner of ours here on the Focus Group for quite some time. It's a great site. If you go to focusgroupradio.com, you can click on the Deep Discount logo and start owning your passion. They've got all kinds of great prices, and I think in many regards the lowest prices on DVDs, Blu-rays, vinyl, and lots of other audio products such as and collectibles and such like that. So head over there and start shopping away. We like you to go through our site because we get credit for it. And if you spend over $25, which who wouldn't, you get free shipping. So we always love that. They've got a baby boomer sale going on right now. So, Mr. Nash, what did you pick this week?
So baby boomers sale was interesting. I will just pose this question. You probably recognized a lot of the titles in there, right?
Oh, I did. And it was difficult for me to choose, but I chose mine based on a reason I'll tell you.
I love yours. The reason you and I recognize so many titles in the baby boomer section is growing up, many of these shows and movies were on TV when we were growing up. Especially a lot of the old movies. But I'm flipping through and I do the Tim Bennett trick. I go maybe 8 pages in and I click on that page and that's the one I'm going to start shopping. And the minute I was in 8 or 9 pages, I saw The Miracle Worker on Blu-ray. And this is a movie that I've seen maybe twice. And it stars Patty Duke and Anne Bancroft. Both won Oscars for their respective performances as Keller, Patty Duke, and Sullivan, the teacher who eventually teaches her how to communicate through sign language and other stuff. Pretty amazing film. It's shot in a very kind of spare, starkly lit black and white because it really focuses on the two characters. And I thought I would love to see this again, especially on Blu-ray, but it looks fantastic. And, when I think of Patty Duke, we all know about Patty Duke, the Patty Duke Show, the whole bit. And she broke out of those roles by first doing like the Valley of the Dolls, I'm Neely O'Hara. And then she actually wins an Oscar for portraying Helen Keller in The Miracle Worker. So that's one of those actresses that intrigues me because she really went from being like teeny bop, teen idol into these serious roles like Valley of the Dolls and The Miracle Worker. Right. So that was my pick. I would definitely want. It's from 1959.
So it says here, the one I'm looking at here, maybe I'm looking at a different thing, but it said 62, 59, whatever. But so it came out then. Would this have been something they showed us in school?
We might have seen The Miracle Worker in school. Yeah, especially by the time of the 70s. We might have actually seen that projected in school.
Yeah, I think that's the only time I ever saw it, and then probably did not appreciate it by a long stretch. So it would be a good thing to revisit.
The most famous scene that you're probably thinking of is the water pump scene, where Anne Bancroft's pumping the water and Helen Keller's got her hands under it, and that's when she finally learns how to say or sign the word water. But that's the one that I'm most familiar with from this movie.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, that one's worth revisiting. I picked something very basic, of course, situation comedy that defined the perfect American family for the Boomer generation and many others. It ran from 57 to 63. Leave It to Beaver, the complete series on DVD. I wish everyone could have been like June Cleaver, right? I mean, I flipped it on this morning. I was flipping through and Leave It to Beaver was on. June was there. It was early morning.
She had a cake made already.
Dressed to the nines, pearls. I mean, everything. Yes, cake was in the oven. Everything was getting ready for lunch, and she was going to go pick some berries, fresh berries, make ice cream for the dinner. She's got to go to the PTA meeting. Blah blah blah. Anyways, perfect. So Barbara Billingsley that played June, but Eddie Haskell, who was played by Ken Osmond, just passed away a couple days ago, and I was reading his obit, and that's what kind of triggered this when I saw the Leave It to Beaver series. And he died at 76 years old. He was a police officer, and they talked a lot about how he was just supposed to be a one-off character, make one appearance early on in the show. But they said he was the perfect villain, and one of the few people they said that actually created a character, because he was nothing like that in real life. That kind of conniving, very flirting with Wally's mom, June Cleaver, and always trying to be kind of the wise guy. And they said he very much was not like that, and that's why they thought he did a great job at acting. But he tried to after his role, so he ended up being on over 100 of the episodes instead of just the one. But he said he became typecast, and after trying for about 10 years to get other roles, he was just always typecast as Eddie Haskell. He ended up going to work for the LAPD and retired from the Los Angeles Police Department. And he said, I loved Leave It to Beaver. It provided me something that, or opportunities few people get. He said, but I was very much typecast, and it was a death sentence for me to have an acting career. So I thought
I bet you and I, one day we should do, just off the top of our heads, the list of actors who were typecast because of what they did on a particular role, right? Like if you think Herman Munster, was that Edwin Gwynn?
Fred Gwynn. Fred Gwynn could never do anything else, right? Even
until
when
he shows up in my cousin Vinny, right? He played the judge,
right? But people were screaming in the audience during that. It's Herman Munster. It's Herman. And
so there's an actor, right, who's just totally typecast.
And he had a rule. Howard Stern did a bit. Somebody should pull it up. I'm sure you could find it on social media somewhere. But you remember Howard Stern would send these roving reporters out, and Fred Gwynn was doing some sort of event, and it was strict policy with the press: do not ask about the Munsters. Then, of course, Stern sends somebody in there asking all these Munsters questions, and Fred Gwynn went a little bit ballistic, and it was quite funny. But so there's 36 discs. And it's a great price at deep discount. It's $78.99, so you save over $40 if you order the complete set on DVD of Leave It to Beaver. So that's what I picked this week.
It's a good one.
We figured out it would take you a little over 4 days to watch it if you didn't sleep.
I like that addendum. If you didn't sleep,
it's funny. It's funny when we mentioned binge watching earlier about Netflix. I've only binge watched 2 things in my life, and one of them was Hollywood, and I don't know why. I just kind of got sucked into it. And then the other one was the
Stranger? Was it that British that you really got sucked into that? That was that. It's like 7 episodes, right?
Right, but my idea of binge watching, because I'm like you, I can't waste the whole day. I might do 3-4 hours and I'm out. But and then I'll go do something else and then maybe pick it up again. But I guess a real binge is you sit and do the whole thing without any stopping, which I think is tough. So
that's why there are certain foods, there are certain edible items, there are certain things that enhance that binging thing, I suppose, right?
Yeah. So what's the new release? What was the new release this week?
New release this week is the 2020 version of Emma. And it's Jane Austen's beloved comedy about finding your equal and earning your happy ending is reimagined in this delicious new film adaptation. Handsome, clever, and rich, Emma Woodhouse is a restless queen bee without rivals in her sleepy little town. In this glittering satire of social class and the pain of growing up, Emma must adventure through misguided matches and romantic missteps to find the love that has been there all along. So I'm going to give you a little piece of trivia. You know, one of my favorite movies by director Amy Heckerling is based actually on the story of Emma. It's kind of like a Los Angeles modern retelling of Emma. Do you know what that movie is? Alicia Silverstone, Los Angeles.
Animal House?
Clueless.
Oh, God. Clueless. I was trying to say Animal Farm. No, it's Animal House. No, Clueless. I was trying to think. I had it. Like I was thinking some mall thing or something. But really, so Clueless, is it really based on? Is another version of this?
Is pretty loosely based on Emma, and in fact the Cher character, the Alicia Silverstone character, is in fact Emma. She buzzes around. She tries to hook up people, and the love of her life ends up being the person she's around the most but doesn't pay attention until the very end. And in the movie Clueless, it happened to be her brother Josh. Wow. So I always like when there's a modern take on something. But yeah, it's I would check out Emma. I've always enjoyed the story, the Jane Austen story. So this should be a good pickup. Definitely. And hey, if you're a Downton Abbey fan or anything like that, it's a period piece. Who doesn't love a period piece? I do. That's what I could binge, Tim. I could binge Downton Abbey. It's simpler. Yeah, it's a simpler time. You know what's coming. And having seen it already, I know what's coming. So it's like going to autopilot mode. All right, so to recap for everybody, it's the Baby Boomer sale over at Deep Discount. You get there by going to our site, focusgroupradio.com, clicking on the logo, and look for the shark. Arr, Sharky the Shark. In our new format, the puppet will return someday, the shark puppet. So Boomer sale, Tim picked the Leave It to Beaver complete series collection. Cool to watch that. I picked The Miracle Worker on Blu-ray. Both stars, Patty Duke and Anne Bancroft, won Oscars for their roles in that movie, and the release this week is Emma. What do we say, Garrett?
Thanks, Deep Discount.
We are going to take a quick break, and when we return, we have some shop talk for you, so stay with us, please.
You're listening to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com. Focus on the savvy side of 9 to 5 with the Focus Group.
Try, really try.
Listen, laugh, and learn with Tim and John.
I never try anything. I just do it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Focus Group. Tim Bennett here, as always, with my good friend and co-host, Mr. John T. Nash. Thanks for joining us. We're here live every Wednesday at 1 p.m. East. Also, be sure to catch our podcast, which is TFG Unbuttoned. You can find out all about us at focusgroupradio.com. So, Mr. Nash, Shop Talk this week. So we did a tease at the top of the show, which essentially said that American business continues to lead when it comes to equality. And there were two stories here that have been in the news lately, and I thought it'd be a good discussion for us to have just about business in general when it comes to giving equality, or at least pushing, I don't want to say pushing equality, but supporting equality for all people in the workplace and in areas where sometimes the government is slow to react. So the first one involved KFC. I was a little bit surprised about this one. I don't know if you were yourself. Were you?
I'm glad you said it because, yes, I was. I had no idea that the heiress to the Kentucky Fried Chicken fast food chain is a woman named Kayla Methvin, and she's actually a lingerie designer. And she's very involved in LGBTQ charities and work, and it's a pretty cool story. But no, is that what you're talking about? The surprise that this I'd never heard of this woman before, and that she was the heiress to the whole fortune.
Right, and she's on this mission. She's going to raise $1 million for LGBTQ charities and other social organizations. And I laughed. It said her grandfather founded Rainbow Chicken Unlimited, the company that acquired KFC in the 80s. And I thought, Rainbow Chicken Unlimited, with Grandpa, that's quite the name. And their plan is to also hire a number of LGBTQ people, domestic violence survivors, also people in the sober community, and help them get back on their feet and get work and experience. And I just thought it's something she didn't have to do. And I thought it was something where she was using the money and using the power of the company that she's associated with as the heiress to spend the money to help foster equality. So I thought it was an interesting story.
Well, I also think that what I liked is that she's specific to the industry she wants to help. So she's giving people opportunities to work for themselves in the fashion industry, learning the ins and outs, because she herself, as we said earlier, has a line of designer lingerie. So I thought that it was just you found this, it was not a long article, but it was a nice piece though, because it reminds you that there are people that are out there being champions for the community and doing really cool things to help people out and let them get ahead. Now, this next one, which dovetails into this, I love these stories, especially these shareholder meeting stories. So Tim finds this other piece, and it's about Hershey's had their annual shareholder meeting. I think they did it virtually, probably because you couldn't get together. And during the meeting, the CEO was asked a question by a man named Justin Danhoff, and he is the general counsel of the so-called, I love the way the article plays it, National Center for Public Policy Research and director of the Free Enterprise Project. Basically, it's organizations that are promoting the concept of religious liberty, specifically for the Christian faith, because I don't see a lot of this going on in other faiths, but maybe that's just me.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. So this is about the religious freedom laws and the bathroom laws and all the other issues that have been boiling up under the current administration. And so she was asked directly by this guy, Justin, if Hershey's would stop supporting the HRC because they're the leading opponent of religious liberty, and saying that the HRC threatens boycotts and they're ruining the country and all this other nonsense. And her response was quick and swift, and she said simply, "Inclusion and diversity are incredibly important values to us here at Hershey Company, not only to our culture but also to our business." So she just, in no uncertain terms, said, we'd rather have. We'd rather value diversity than anti-LGBTQ bigotry. Mm-hmm. And I just thought for her to stand up and do that and directly answer it head on, good for her. She's the first woman to ever lead Hershey as the CEO, and I just thought good for her for confronting it directly and not dancing around it. She put it right out there. It reminded me of what you and I learned from Tim Mahoney many years ago when we worked at Subaru, because then they started to want to have an engagement and a chat with her. And one of the things at the very end was they said that the company did not respond to his rant afterwards when he got upset that he didn't get under his skin. And his whole thing to us was always, if somebody's going to come after you for that, don't engage them in conversation, because you're never going to change their mind. And all you're doing is giving them fodder to keep it going and help them raise more money. And that's always worked for me. Whenever you have issues where you've got somebody that threatens to boycott, it's in the company's best interest to not directly, I think, respond to it. I don't know. I think you agree as well.
Well, I do, and I'm glad you brought up that story. So to dovetail into what Tim was just saying, a good friend of ours, Tim Mahoney, taught us this lesson. And I have to be honest with you, I don't know how many people are capable of actually following through on his expert advice, because the minute you do engage, the minute you answer, the minute you start having a conversation, it's not. We normally approach these things like, well, I'm going to help you change your mind, or I'm going to help you see my point of view. The point is that they don't care about your point of view. They don't want to change their mind. They're locked in. But it's hard to not want to engage and to change minds or to uplift the conversation. But he had the discipline to not do that. And to feed into that, this guy, as Tim said earlier, Hershey kind of ignored him. And at the end of the article, it says, experiencing a serious case of bitter grapes. Dan Hoff called and this is who you're dealing with when you deal with these people. This is the thing that gets me. Dan Hoff called the Human Rights Campaign, HRC, perhaps the most influential left-wing organization that most Americans have never heard of, claiming HRC staff spend their days trying to end religious freedom and marginalize all Americans of faith. Hershey is 100% complicit in these vile, bigoted, and reprehensible actions. If the company had any shame, it would end its funding of this extremist organization now. I think anybody who knows the HRC knows what they do. They're a lobbying organization. They are promoting things like equal workplace protections, sensible things. The last thing I would call them is a influential left-wing organization that most Americans have never heard of. A lot of Americans haven't heard of them, but I don't think they're like some crazy left-wing organization. Do you?
Well, no, and that's where if you wanted to try to get an argument with this guy, and this is where you would lose, right? Because I would say to him, what has the HRC done that you feel is bigoted?
Yeah. And the minute you ask that question,
because they think somebody who's transgender and identifies as a woman should be able to use the woman's room. I don't know what ends up happening with these crazies in this religious freedom about what goes on in the bathroom. I don't understand the bathroom issues. The bathroom is not. They seem to think this is the place where LGBTQ people pick up the bathroom. I mean, have you ever seen anything so absurd?
No. You and I, one day you said to me, we were talking about this exact same thing. We were probably on air talking about it, and you said, who wants to hang out in the bathroom, especially a public bathroom? I mean,
it's disgusting.
You want to do your thing and move on with your day. Flush, wash your hands, always wash your hands.
Which reminds me, you take it all the way to the other extreme. One time we had Aunt Barbara on, and many people know Aunt Barbara, and you and I were at SiriusXM, and we were in the lobby, and the show was over, and Aunt Barbara was in full drag at the time, and 7 feet tall in her heels, and is in the lobby, and the lobby's packed with people, and she needs to go to the restroom. So she gets to the restroom, and I remember her staying there, and she looks at the men's room, and she looks at the women's room, and she looks at the men's room, and then she dodged into the men's room, and then half the lot people are screaming and laughing, and she's waving. You know what I mean? It's she's going to the bathroom, right? Yeah. It's who cares what bathroom she went into? I mean, for God's sakes, maybe we're just being Northeast people. I don't know. Or West Coast people. I don't know what the right word is.
I puzzle at the amount of human energy, time, and capital that goes into denying someone basic rights or even worrying about it, for God's sakes. You know, like take Target, still the center of like some boycott from the AFA for the exact same reason of dressing rooms and bathrooms. They allow people to use the facility of their chosen gender. Whereas the Religious Freedom Bunch says, no, it should be the DNA of whatever you're born with, completely missing the entire philosophical and scientific discussion about any of that. Right. Whatever, Now,
I was in South Carolina and a couple of years ago, and someone the Uber driver wanted to have a discussion about this. They were very much, when they heard we were from the North, they wanted to discuss this. And I just would not engage in it because I just knew it wasn't going to go anywhere, and I needed to get where I wanted to go. But I was why are you worried about where someone's going to the bathroom?
One time I was on a flight coming back from, I want to say it was Denver or Portland. I had been out for business, and this guy sits next to me, all smiles, very perfectly crisp white shirt, whatever. I had the window seat. It was a 2-seater. Plane takes off, and and he's watching me do something on my laptop, and eventually he says to me, he starts talking, and eventually he's like, "Have you found Jesus?" And I instantly clicked into and I'm like, no, I said, is he lost? And the guy looks at me with this look on his face. And I said, because I just saw him at the Denver airport. Or no, it was Denver for sure. I said, I saw him at the Denver airport in Terminal 2. He looks at me and I said, yeah, his name is Jesus. He's hanging out there telling people that they should love each other and not complain so much. He looked straight ahead and didn't speak to me again for the entire flight because that's not the narrative he wanted. He wanted to either proselytize or convert somebody. Yeah. But for me to say, oh, is he lost?
The last Jesus I saw was at the Apple Store in Philly. He wears his cross and everything in town. He's still around.
One of my favorite stories you did, that was a couple summers ago.
Yeah.
I love that story. And he does call himself Jesus, right?
Yeah, it's Jesus. He goes and charges his iPhone up at the Apple Store. He leaves his cross outside, drives everyone crazy. He's in like a tunic, a sheet, whole deal.
You'd think his father, the Lord Almighty God, would charge his iPhone for just zap it like a finger comes on. The phone is charged.
But again, so typical of just Philadelphia. Here comes Jesus, going to charge up his phone. It's like, oh, okay, come on in.
Which is why we live in these great cities, right?
Whatever.
But to not put too fine a cap on what Tim is saying, when Tim found these two articles, it was our continued discussion about how our amazement that corporate America has usually led the way on rights for their employees around the globe, and in the U.S. in particular with LGBTQ acceptance and diversity. When we worked with VW, we were close friends with the head of human resources who dealt with diversity, and it was a very important thing for her and the company to attract the best talent and to keep people happy. And then you go a couple rings out of that to government or the religious freedom stuff, and it has little to do with attracting talent, keeping people happy, personal growth, career, all those positive things.
Right.
Instead, it comes down to this, like, you can't do this, you can't do that, you shouldn't even exist. Oh, but wait a minute. If you say, you're going to recant your sins and you love God, you never touch anybody else for the rest of your life, maybe we'll let you into heaven. Wacky like that, right?
Yeah, no, it continues. LGBTQ people continue to be discriminated against in this country, and a lot of times government turns its eye to it, and it's too bad. So be sure you vote this November.
There you go. All right, we're going to wrap it up, folks. And you're right. Vote, 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 vote. Vote as many times as you want. In different elections, of course. Thanks for joining us today. We want to remind you to go to focusgroupradio.com to check out our site and all our video and audio there, including Unbuttoned, our Tuesday podcast. A big thanks to Deep Discount. This week it was the Baby Boomer sale. Tim picked the Leave It to Beaver complete collection, which I believe the boys in the booth thought would take how many days? Continuous viewing? 4 point something days?
A little over 4 days, yeah.
It's too much.
That's a lot of morality plays in a short amount of time, man. Because that's what Leave It to Beaver was. It was like Father Knows Best and stuff, a morality play.
Do the right thing, John. Do the right thing.
I picked The Miracle Worker on Blu-ray, and the release this week is Emma, based on Jane Austen's wonderful novel. It's the newest version of Emma, which I think you'll enjoy. So we want to remind everybody to stay safe and don't Tim, now I know. Don't text and drive, arrive alive. I twisted my tongue for the very first time. We'll see you in the new week.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable, John.
It's The Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.